and welcome to India Global. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. Before we get down to the big story that we're tracking right now, let's get you the headlines. First up, Australia caps foreign students' intake amidst rising immigration. Canada cuts temporary foreign workers as unemployment grows. Protests erupt outside Indian Visa Centre in Dhaka. Operations at the Indian Visa Centre halted amidst protests by local Bangladeshis asking for a visa to India. Modi's peacemaking phone calls continue. Prime Minister Modi dials Russian President Putin after he spoke with US President Joe Biden. Prime Minister Modi's message of peace, humanitarian support for Ukraine rings loud, even as the US readout of the call chooses to skip mention of Bangladesh. US Security Advisor Jake Sullivan visits China amidst strained ties between US and China. Top US and China officials are set to discuss defense and Taiwan apart from Vietnam. Japan accuses Chinese spy plane of violating its airspace. It is the first known Chinese violation into Japanese airspace. It has ramifications for the entire Indo-Pacific security calculus. Okay, the big story that we are tracking right now and the big focus of India Global today is the concerted push that one is seeing around countries when it comes to immigration. And who gets impacted the most? Well, it's the foreign students. That's a political hot potato and in fact is the most convenient aspect whenever politicians raise the issue of immigration, and it's happening in Canada, it's happening in Australia, apart from several others as well. Incidentally, both Canada and Australia are set to see elections in about 12 to 14 months. So this is a domestic issue which is very important also because of rising unemployment, rising cost of living expenses. So what's happened? Australia has capped the foreign students' intake because of high immigration levels that one saw in 2022, right after COVID, and that's a trend that's not unique to Australia but also to several other countries including UK. Now, Australia's crackdown is primarily to ensure that domestic students and domestic opportunities are given primarily to Australian citizens first. But here's the fact. Foreign students contribute about 48 billion Australian dollars to the economy in 2023, and in the midst of this, Indian students have also been caught in the middle of this political slugfest. Likewise, Canada has also capped temporary foreign workers amidst growing unemployment, and Justin Trudeau's government, which is extremely unpopular and facing backlash because of this issue, has resorted to just that, which is to find that political balance by trying to ease strained housing healthcare sectors, and for that it has said that it will reduce the intake of foreign permanent residents. So how does this impact Indian students? How does this impact those students who are already there and are on that path to get PR? And most importantly, what is the messaging like now going forward for students who wish to go and study in these universities, whether it's in Canada or in Australia? I'm going to come to the bit about the economic aspects of this and how it impacts the universities of Canada and Australia. But frankly, that's not my concern at India Global. My concern here is to tell the viewers watching this that what happens to your kids who either aspire to go to these universities or are already there and are on that path of PR, and what happens to that? Does it get impacted or are there possible ways out? That's the big focus today on India Global. And let me get in my two experts, Jitin Chawla and Ajay Sharma, to talk more about it. And the big questions on your screens are there as far as this debate is concerned. Ajay Sharma, let me start with you, which is that one sees the kind of impact that is there. It's a trend now, whether it is in Australia or Canada or several others. New Zealand also came out with its own version. The question is how big an impact this is for Indian students who are there right now, because this is set to kick in by end of this year. Ajay Sharma.
So first of all, thank you for having me on the show. And Not really a major impact because there's a whole world outside of Canada and Australia and UK. So let's first divide the debate in two parts. Number one, students who are already there, how this change is going to impact them. Uh, Can you hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So let's divide the debate in two parts. One is where the students who are already in these countries, and the other is students who are planning to go to these countries. So, as
But
far
what
as
happens to students who are there? That's my question, sir.
so, primarily, if they are in the right courses, they have nothing to worry about. They will get the post-study work permit also, and they will also be on the way to PR pathway, especially if they are in healthcare courses or they are in STEM courses. But if they are not in one of the preferred occupations clearly, and that is why this, cap on this temporary foreign workers is going to really harm the Indian students who are already there because majority of them are working on low wages. So majority of low wages occupations are not in the preferred list. As a result of which this will directly impact them and their work permit after it gets over for the current tenure is not likely to be extended and they are likely to have come back. There may not
Okay.
be any option.
Right. So, and that's my question. On your screens are those big questions. Let's take those full frame before I come back to Ajay Sharma and Jitin Chawla, which is that there are now 70,000 students who are there who may be facing possible deportation, and that also includes Indians because Indian students do form a very large chunk of international students. What is the recourse for these students who are there right now, Ajay Sharma? Because that is priority number one. Kids and students who are already there, how can we protect their interests, or what's the best possible solution for them?
So the ideal solution, and it may not be the best fit for everybody. The ideal solution for them is because there are courses which are available and which can be done, which are of 6 months tenure. They could be in early childhood teaching, they could be in healthcare. So these are the preferred occupations. If they manage within the work permit tenure they have, they can undergo those 6 months courses. They will be able to get a job in one of these preferred occupation, which indeed will permit them to apply for provincial nomination and
Okay.
afterwards the PR visa.
Okay, Jitin Chawla, as a career counselor, how are you counseling students now who want to go to these universities, who've set that path for themselves in terms of whether it's Canada or Australia? Then I'm going to come out with some figures to tell just how significant Indian students are as a proportion there. But I want to first understand from you, how are you counseling parents and students who've identified this as a career path?
In our day-to-day interactions, if I look at 3 years back, so Canada occupied a very large chunk. I would say if somebody's like me is sending 100 students, then maybe 35, 40 would be going to Canada. Today, that number has come down to maybe 6, 7. Though the students who are going to topmost universities like University of Toronto, UBC Vancouver, McGill, still they are going for various reasons that family is there, so on and so forth. But in terms of political uncertainty, in terms of what is happening with the visa, also from 2016, simplified student visa framework was launched. So that was for Australia. Here it was 2023 International Student Immigration Strategy was launched, and the impact was felt immediately. Postgraduate work permit is there, but then again it is difficult for a lot of students to get the right kind of work. I have students who are toppers who go to the topmost universities, but for them to get a job in consulting and all is increasingly becoming difficult. Internships also for some students have been difficult. So given all of that, the number of people going to Canada has declined. Coming to Australia, Australia in 2016 they had launched a simplified student visa framework which continues to evolve. Like this year, 2024, they changed the English language requirements. So for student visa, 500, 5.5
Okay.
to 6. For temporary grad visa, 6 to 6.5. Financial proof was also increased by 21%,
Right.
which for an audience which is a wealthy audience, it's absolutely fine. I mean, it doesn't matter to them. But for a lot of middle class or even lower middle class people who take loans and all, it's a significant amount.
Yes.
So here still people are kind of able to stay back, get a PR and all, but Canada seems to be quite down.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, viewers, quickly I want to tell the significance of this. One is that data suggests that 1 in 40 Canadian is actually now an international student. In Australia, 1 in 33 Australians is now an international student. So that is the number of international students who are there in Canada and Australia, and you put that internal political dynamics there and you get the results that you do. In terms of specifically the numbers that have increased, why the Canadian government is under pressure. In 2014, the foreign student permit holders were about 330,000. In 10 years, that has crossed 1 million. So it's been more than 3 times in the last decade, and which is why the government is facing political pressure from the domestic constituents. Very quickly, I'm running out of time, and this is a question I asked to both Ajay Sharma and Jitin Chawla. Ajay Sharma, do you see other destinations now becoming popular, or do you think this is just election time rhetoric and this may change and things could continue to going back to normal?
No, this will not change for at least another 2 to 5 years, at least for these countries that we are talking about, Canada, Australia, UK. So it's not going to change for next 2 to 3 years, simply for the reason that they already have good number of students who are on pathway to various, objectives, PR, or they have to come back or work permit, whatever. There is no doubt whatsoever, because, for example, USA got their highest number of Indian students for a long time. So there is no doubt whatsoever that USA, European countries, countries like Singapore, Hong Kong, they
Okay.
are the new popular destination that Indian students will go for. And if at
Okay.
all Indian students have interest towards Australia, Canada, UK,
Right.
my personal recommendation is go for healthcare and
Go for healthcare. I'm sorry, I want to quickly give 30 seconds to Jitin Chawla, completely out of time. Yes, very quickly.
So, see, again, it is different. So, Canada, still for STEM people are going for science, technology, engineering. So, it's a good story, and there are provisions so they can stay back, both in
Okay.
programs and in express entry scheme also. Whereas, if I look at other areas, like somebody is a humanities student or even pure play
Right.
management, then get more difficult. If I look at Australia, Australian universities typically have more flexibility,
Okay.
and still wise it is better. Though Australia also and Canada also is increasingly becoming more and more expensive.
Okay,
Also,
I'll
people
have
will
to interrupt you there, Mr. Chawla. I understand that it's now all about courses when you choose geographies, and it cannot be more generic, even though it may be not in sync with the interests of the students. On that note, appreciate both of you joining me on India Global. Shifting focus now to the Bangladesh-India ties that continue to remain on the edge. There's lack of trust between the two neighbors. In fact, anger and resentment against India seems to be on the rise in Bangladesh. First, India was blamed for causing floods by releasing water from the dam in Tripura, a claim that was rejected by the Indian government. And after floods, it is now related to grant of visas by Indian government. On your screens are some of those visuals which were very scary when they actually played out, because it happened at a visa center in Dhaka where thousands of Bangladeshis had descended because they were protesting against delays in processing requests. The situation, in fact, prompted the Indian High Commission to take up the matter officially with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Dhaka. Look at the security situation it resulted in, and that's our big debate today, which is that why is it that India and Bangladesh continue to have issues related to trust, and what is the best possible way to bridging that trust deficit? Let me get in quickly. Shamsher Chowdhury joining me live from Dhaka, former Foreign Secretary of Bangladesh, also joining Ambassador Sajjanhar. Always a pleasure to have him on the show. Mr. Chowdhury, let me start with you, sir. There seems to be these minor issues which are actually causing major friction between India and Bangladesh. How does one go about figuring that out first, sir?
Well, thank you very much for having me. I think the visa issue, I must say that the general experience is that the visa system works well. There are a number of visa centers in Bangladesh, but the demand is very, very high. The demand is very, very high because of people, needing to go to India for education purposes, for medical purposes, for other reasons. And in most cases, I would say that the applicant turns out to be quite impatient. I mean, the processing of visas takes time in every country. And India has the largest visa office anywhere in the world, the one that they have in Dhaka itself. And they have others. They have in Sylhet, they have in Khulna, they have in Rajshahi. Now they're opening one also in Rangpur. So I guess it's more of outpour of anger. I don't support this.
But sir, how does a protest about delays in visa processing suddenly and very quickly turn into anti-India protests? It's a protest. You are upset with the fact that your visa is taking long. How does that quickly spiral into an anti-India protest?
Well, I don't know. I haven't heard the slogan because I was doing something else all day today. And I haven't had a chance to look at the news all through. I mean, this is something I think that happened yesterday. I don't know if it happened today. But I mean, anger spills over. Anger is not always rational. I've always maintained that anger is one alphabet away from danger. And I hope people understand that the visa issue is nothing to do with India as such. It's just that some people, irrational people, it happens in one or two other countries. Singapore mission faced similar problems. Malaysian High Commission here faced similar problems. There are thousands of Bangladeshis going to Malaysia. There are 5 flights a day from between Dhaka and Kuala Lumpur.
Yes.
And 4 flights a day between Dhaka and Singapore. So sometimes I was talking to the Malaysian High Commissioner day before yesterday over lunch, and she was also saying that people get restless, people start requesting for expediting the things, but it's difficult to explain to an irrational crowd that things take time. I mean, visas are not processed. Bangladesh also, visa system is not the easiest in the world.
Yes.
We hear a lot of complaints from people applying for visas to come to Bangladesh. It's unfortunate. It shouldn't be. I certainly don't condone it. The visa issue is a very technical thing.
Right.
And I know the people in the Indian High Commission here they work like 20 hours a day.
Yes.
Sometimes my daughter-in-law herself had to collect her passport at 9 o'clock in the evening. And I told her to, understand the pressure that the Indian
Absolutely.
go through.
And Ambassador Sajjanhar, then let me ask you this: Is it as normal as what Shamsher Chowdhury is saying on the show, which is that it's a similar situation with some of the other countries as well? He mentioned Malaysia. Or should we look at the larger picture here, connect the dots? Likewise, the flood situation was also a very normal thing. It rains in this part of the world, in this part of the year, and that's how the situation became the way it did. But it quickly led to a lot of blame game. And similar is what we're seeing right now, how delays in visa processing quickly turned into anti-India protests. How do we see the larger picture here? Ambassador Sajjanhar.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gaurie, for having me on your show. Always a pleasure to be with you. I think there are elements, particularly as a result of the change that has taken place in Dhaka, particularly the change that has taken place in Bangladesh. There are elements which are inimical to India, which are hostile to India. They, I think, would be looking for any particular opportunity where they can get out and protest against India or take out any sort of demonstration against India. So, whether any particular issue is it's valid, it's relevant, it's not, there are elements there and we are aware of it. I remember when I used to be in Dhaka, and that used to be in the early 90s, the pressure on visas to come to India has always been there. It's not a new phenomenon that, it has suddenly jumped up. Maybe it has suddenly jumped up right now because of the instability in that country, increasing insecurity in that country. People want to move out maybe to, safer havens or whatever it is. So maybe the numbers have gone up as compared to what it was there earlier. But it has always, I have never really heard, even during my time in Dhaka or even otherwise, over the last 10, 15 years, we have not heard that there have been any such protests and demonstrations. I think it is also related. You spoke about the big picture, Gaurie. I think it is also related to the current fluctuations and the ups and downs in the relations between India and Bangladesh at the moment. till they stabilize, I think these sort of problems are likely to continue for some time.
Mr. Chowdhury, respond to that, sir, that this is a derivative of how New Delhi and Dhaka's relationship is going through a bit of a up and down phase right now.
Well, there are elements on both sides of the border who always don't speak rationally. You know, when a very senior minister in the Indian cabinet call Bangladeshis as termites, it doesn't go down very well here. You know, I think you must see things more objectively and from a broader piece of angle. So let us not look at individual elements. We have to look beyond that. The first message of goodwill that the interim government head, Professor Yunus, received was from the Indian Prime Minister. The first telephone call Professor Yunus made to any foreign head of government was the Indian Prime Minister. The first foreign envoy in Dhaka to have called on Professor Yunus was the Indian High Commissioner. And so, you know, if the policy-making level, the decision-making level, the engagements are sustained engagement, are continuous. And when the Indian High Commissioner here, who's a very professional diplomat, and I know him well, and when he met Professor Yunus, one of the things Professor Yunus said was, you know, we have been talking, not just this government, but successive governments in Bangladesh have been taken because we are vulnerable to the, you know, to the unpredictable nature of rivers and waters in our part of the world, especially in the east.
Yes.
So we have been talking since the 80s. I remember when we had very heavy floods in Bangladesh. And President Rashad was the president. I don't know when my Indian friend was Jean Hacker, that we should look at joint management of our waters, of our common rivers. And that has not happened. You see, the floods in India is now the global weather pattern has become so unpredictable, so perverted, that you cannot even not know what will happen next week.
Absolutely, absolutely. So
if weather
is an issue.
We would
absolutely,
know when,
sir. Yes.
When you would manage and restore water in India, release them when it is time. This joint initiative is extremely, extremely important, and it's long overdue. We have 54 rivers, and we have agreement only on one.
Right, absolutely, sir. You've raised a very important point. I'm sorry, I'll have to interject you there. But a quick last word, Ambassador Sajjanhar. How do we go about building this trust deficit that is there? You know, India and Bangladesh have a very long history of brotherhood. How do we get over and tide over this present phase?
You know, in my view, Gaurie, I don't think either of the countries has a choice. You know, we are neighbors. We have to live together, and it is better for both of us if we live together well, if we have good relations. And we've had good relations in the past also, and we know that it's a win-win situation. You know, to Mr. Chowdhury, I did not suggest that it is, done anything at the government level. I think both the governments recognize and realize it very well, that there is no way out. We have to have good relations with each other. You hear what the statements that have been coming from India, the statements that have been coming from Bangladesh.
Absolutely.
What I spoke about was that there are elements who are out there.
Yes, there are elements on both sides, even though government-to-government level interaction is in the positive direction. I'm afraid I have to leave it there, gentlemen. Thanks so much for speaking to me on an issue that we're going to come back to. But with that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Global. Thanks for watching.